Now more than ever, innovative technologies are fueling change and sparking new ways of thinking. Collaboration between corporations and startups is key to staying at the forefront of these trends. However, finding the right startups can be expensive, time-consuming, and ineffective. But Plug and Play is here to help. As a corporate partner, you will gain access to a whole ecosystem of innovation. Discover startups that meet your tech interests. Stay updated on the latest trends and network with industry peers. We will help you during every stage of your innovation journey, no matter where you are and where you want to go. Get in touch today.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jennifer Thomas, and I am Managing Director of Plug and Play Health in the US. And we're so pleased to welcome you to our webinar today entitled The Rise of Femtech, Trends, Opportunities, and Success Stories. And we're actually going to cover all of that today in this kind of jam-packed and really exciting session with great speakers. So please stick with us through a really great session today. Just a little bit of context before we kick it off. So Plug and Play is headquartered in Silicon Valley, and what we do across the company is to connect the world's best startups, like the ones you'll see today, with our national and global corporate partners to help them bring technology and innovation to market faster. And we do this in almost every industry worldwide. But when it comes to healthcare, we're specifically addressing the needs to improve improve the patient experience, patient outcomes, and enhance the provider experience as well. So we accomplish this by running accelerator programs, and we do that on behalf of our partners, as in the ones that you'll hear from today, meaning that they get to choose the startups that enter the 12-week program. And this webinar is actually part of that program, and both Babyscripts and the Snapback, two startups presented today, participated in our accelerators. So we have accelerators in 36 locations across the globe. Then we also assist corporations in their open innovation efforts, helping them to scout and discover and test drive and find startups that can really enhance their ability to innovate, find new revenue opportunities, and really enhance their business. So we do this for 500 corporations worldwide, including Roche and university hospitals, who will be our panelists today. And then finally, we're an investor. We focus on early stage, seed, and Series A startups, and we invest in over 200 startups worldwide every year. And we have invested in both Coral and Gabby, who will be presenting today. So there's lots of startups and our partners integrated into the webinar today, and we have just such an exciting agenda. Something a little bit new to kick us off today. We're going to do a trends presentation on Femtech with Brittany Barretto. Then we're going to move to our panel discussion with 3 panelists, and also have Q&A at the end of that. So please get your questions ready. And then finally, we'll hear from 3 startups in the Femtech space: Coral, the Snapback, and Gabby. So please get your Q&A ready. Use the Q&A icon, and please stay on mute if you're not speaking. All right, so let's get right to it today. And I'm going to ask our panelists to come to the stage. So great. So first I'll introduce Brittany. So she's a geneticist who launched the nation's first DNA-based app called Faramore. And when it didn't turn out to be the unicorn that she thought, she moved into venture capital, working at the Capital Factory, which is the most active VC fund in Texas. And she helped them launch their Houston office. Then she started working on Femtech in 2019 when she discovered the grave inequalities between men's and women's health. And then in 2020 of March, she launched a podcast, a Femtech podcast, and it actually gained kind of international attention overnight. And now she is launching a US-based seed stage venture fund called Coyote Ventures to invest in stellar Femtech startups. So Brittany, take it away. We're so excited to hear your presentation today.
Thank you, Jennifer. Such an awesome introduction. Thank you. Let me just share my screen here. All right. So I have 10 minutes to tell you about the thing I am most passionate about. So let's go. Feel free to take a screenshot of anything I show. You can also go to femtechfocus.org and get actual copies of all the data I'm showing you, because I believe in awareness and accessibility to this type of information. So Femtech Focus is a 501c3 nonprofit. Check it out, femtechfocus.org. We have an awesome podcast, a virtual community, and we are the exclusive femtech researcher for Crunchbase, which is a lot of the data we are going to cover today. So what is femtech? No, I didn't say fintech. I didn't say female founders. I'm saying femtech. Technology, services, and products that improve women, girls, and females' health and wellness. This includes conditions that solely, disproportionately, or differently affect women. And so what I mean by that is the solely is the things we usually think about: menopause, fertility, menstruation. But femtech also includes things that disproportionately affect women, like migraines, autoimmune disease, bone health, or things that differently affect women: heart health, oncology, incontinence. 80% of our founders are female. And so it is, prevalent that you might think that, oh, femtech female founders, but that's just because a lot of women are actually solving their own problems. The rise in femtech actually corresponds to the rise of women in STEM. And so we're really excited to see more and more and more solutions coming to the forefront. But I am very bullish that we need men to care about uterus, because we don't just birth females, right? And women's health is everyone's health. Why should you care? And why is, I'm arguing that there's some discrepancy? Well, there's been a long history of historical and systemic exclusion of women from medical and healthcare innovation. Here's some shocking facts to include, and you can take this with you for the rest of the day. Tell your friends, tell everyone you know about why femtech's important. Maternal mortality rate is on the rise. As a millennial woman, I'm twice as likely to die from childbirth than my own mother. 50% of pregnancies in the United States are unplanned. Seatbelts are made for male physiology. The data literally shows that women die because of seatbelts. There is still no regulatory requirement for female anatomy dummies to be used in car testing safety. Clinical trials didn't include women until 1993. So any drug that came to market before 1993 never tested on a woman previously. Women are twice as likely to get Alzheimer's, and we have no idea why. Men have more heart attacks, but women die more often from heart attacks because the symptoms of a heart attack look very different in a man versus a woman. And to date, there is still no functional test for endometriosis or ovarian cancer. Endometriosis affects 1 in 10 women. So here are just some facts as to how and why we need solutions in this space. There's 2 ways to slice up femtech. You can think about it by condition, or you can think about it by product type. So you can break it up by conditions such as this: reproductive, menstrual, sexual, pelvic, uterine health, brain health, oncology. Or you could take the product route and dice it up like this. So med device, healthcare software, therapeutics, CPG, consumer services. So this is a little look at different ways you can think about femtech on either side. How big is the market? Well, I was always quoting this number that came from Frost & Sullivan a few years ago that said it was 50 billion. When I first heard that number, I was a little discouraged because I knew that femcare, so menstrual pads and tampons, was a $37 billion industry, and women are more than our periods. And so we have done the hard labor of redoing this market size, and we have recently published a paper that shows that it's actually $1.1 trillion. And this is based on analysis of over 103 conditions within 21 subsections of health. And these subsections did take into account things that disproportionately or differently affect women, and we took that into account in our equations. I did highlight a few of the subsections here. It's really interesting to see chronic conditions as the biggest, and chronic conditions disproportionately affect women. Uterine health being a huge market, cardiovascular, mental health, and urinary health. These are all areas that need a lot of more innovation happening. How many companies are there? When I wanted to start a venture fund 2 years ago, I got asked by, really, really wise mentors of mine, well, Brittany, this is great, but are there even enough femtech companies to start a fund? Yes, there are. To date, there are 734 as of last night, globally active companies worldwide that are addressing women or females' health and wellness. This is literally a labor of love. 2 years ago, because PitchBook and Crunchbase were not tagging femtech companies, I just started an Excel sheet. Anything can happen in the world with just an Excel sheet to start with. And to date, I do have a small army of interns. If you are interested in an internship, contact me. We have plenty of work to get done. But this is our database, and you can actually access this database. Go to femtechfocus.org/resources. There are two. We have a companies database, which is this one. And then we also have Femtech Exits database, which I'll get to in one moment. Now, you may be wondering, 734, what are they working on? Well, I'm so glad that you asked. So here I have broken down into different subsections based on vertical of femtech. So that is the maternal health, fertility, pelvic floor health, cardiovascular, ovarian health. So we broke them down and saw how many startups are working on each topic. So of the 734 companies, oops. Oh, no, this is the same one. Sorry. You can see that there are 52% of the companies working in 4 categories. That's menstruation, maternal health, fertility, and sexual wellness. Now, you see that I put saturated areas in quotation marks because unfortunately, the history of innovation for women's health has prioritized the affluent white woman. And so if we really think about menstruation, period poverty is still an issue in the United States today, not in India, yes, in India, but not just in India, not just in Africa, not just in the Congo, not just in South America. It is here in New Orleans, in New York City, in Iowa. When girls are missing school because they don't have access to products. So this is by no means saturated. We already talked about maternal mortality on the rise. Black women are 3 times more likely to die from childbirth than white women, which is just totally unacceptable. So here are my quote unquote saturated areas of femtech. And funny enough, I just added these in right before, during the intro. So I'm hearing that these are some of the companies talking later. And sure enough, look, 2 of them are in maternal health and 1 is in sexual health. Here are the growth areas. So this is what you're going to start to see a lot of. So reproductive health, breastfeeding, menopause, and breast health. Oh, once again, here's Gabby, breast health. Next is, this is the next wave. You can expect a lot more companies in the next 18 months, I would say, are targeting these things. So pelvic floor health, vaginal health, urinary health, contraception, mental health, uterine health, chronic conditions, and hormone health. And these are the areas that are just dire in need of innovation. Abortion, hair, and I don't mean beauty, I mean like pubic hair, really hair care for women in a hygiene sense. Fitness, and I don't mean fitness like, you know, a new wearable app to check your heart monitor. I'm talking about fitness that has nutrition and exercise plans based on a woman's menstrual cycle. To date, MyFitnessPal, your Apple Health app, all of that is based on male metabolism. So we really need to take into account, you know, what is a woman's body's needs. So Femtech Exits, you know, as an investor, we always want to know, is this just a, you know, nice thing to do, or are we going to get capital gains? And you are. So in the last 30 years, there has been 108 exits, making about a $27.6 billion in values created. The average exit value is $301 million. That is significant because the average tech exit is about $240 million. And so we're averaging higher than the average tech exit. There's been 14 IPOs, 94 mergers and acquisitions. Hologic is the most active acquirer, having acquired 20% of all the M&As. Sorry, just open the chat, make sure we're good. Yes, keep the chat active. I love seeing that. Keep going. Also, the average time to exit is 8 years, which is the average for a tech exit. But very, very, very interesting and very exciting. If you're a femtech company that was established in the last 10 years, your average time to exit is actually only 4 years is your time you exit if you've started a femtech company in the last 10 years. That is That is so incredible. And we've had 4 exited unicorns. So I'm sure you all saw recently, Maven Clinic, there was all this news, the first femtech unicorn. I was a little I was a little upset. Everybody, please leave today and say that was not just the first. Women's health is not niche, and there's been other unicorns. So there's been 4 exited, and we have a good handful of other unicorns that are not even exited yet, but worth over $1 billion. So I'm so excited about the massive traction that we're gaining here. So Femtech exits are on the rise. 50% of all exits have happened in the last 5 years. So in 1990, that was Hologic's IPO. And you can see that there was then a 5 or 6 year hiatus. Then there was like a few here and there. 2007, we got to 5. And then all of a sudden by 2015, there was just a real spike. And so we are so excited that this is the current exits as of today for October. And I anticipate this to just be increasing. Who are the Femtech investors? Well, this is actually really interesting. There's not many. All of these funds have, except for Portfolio, all the funds have started in the last 2 years. And so we're all very new funds. We're all on Fund 1. Rhea just opened their Fund 2. The case for her is a family office. Some of these have a different specific vertical within Femtech, such as Rhea is more interested in reproductive health and fertility, whereas Fem Health Ventures is more therapeutics. Coyote and Steel Sky were more generalists, but these are the first funds to really say Femtech is what we are investing in. These are Femtech organizations. If you want to get more involved, feel free to take a screenshot of this. And yes, I did see the question about distributing this document. I have no problem with that. If you use it, just cite FemTech Focus, please, because we do want to be known as the thought leaders in the industry. Subscribe to these organizations' newsletters to know what is going on in the space. There are a ton of hot deals. There is no shortage of hot deals. Coyote has already passed on about 300 deals since July. So no shortage of great deals. We need awareness, investment, research, and policy. And if you're like, how so, or what do you mean? Check out the Femtech Focus podcast. We talk about all these all the time. And I just want to end with 4 main reasons to invest in women's health. First, it's a $1 trillion market. Second, it's prime for disruption. Only 4% of pharma R&D budget is dedicated to women's health. And so that we believe is the reason for such the quick acquisitions happening in the last 10 years, because big companies are not necessarily creating their own innovation. They are watching early stage innovation. And once it hits a certain benchmark of success, they will acquire it. 80% of our founders are female, and female founders rock. The data shows it. And the average exit value is $301 million. So this is not just a nice thing to do. This is a financially savvy thing to do. So thank you so much for your time. I so appreciate Plug and Play changing up the format today so that I could introduce you to Femtech. Please subscribe to Femtech Focus, listen to our podcast, reach out to me, add me on LinkedIn. I will add some links in the chat for you all to follow quickly. Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. This is amazing. Stay on for 1 second. I know we don't have Q&A today, but we really could have gone on for hours on this. And I know a lot of people want your slides. We'll find a way. But how do you encourage people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I would add me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I'll drop my hyperlink in the chat, and listen to the Femtech Focus podcast. It's the best way to stay up to date. We do an episode a week, over 150 episodes. If you haven't listened yet, you got a lot to catch up on. In fact, some of the founders talking today have been on the show as well. So I would recommend, and then lastly, subscribing to Femtech Focus's podcast or newsletter.
Great. Sounds good. And I did see that you said kind of the first thing to do is awareness and advocacy. So I think all of us need to start paying more attention to this. But it's so nice that you had the facts and figures. I think a lot of people in the audience responded to that. So we will find another way to engage you. So people in the audience, we'll get back to you on more, Brittany. But thank you so much again, Brittany. It was fantastic to have you here.
Thanks, Plug and Play.
Cool. Awesome. All right, guys, let's move on next to our panelists. So we have 3 esteemed panelists who are going to share their experiences on partnership and how they're changing the delivery of maternal care. So first we have Anish Sebastian. He's co-founder and CEO of Babyscripts, and he launched the company in March of 2013, and it was really focused on reinventing the standard of prenatal care. So Anish is passionate about driving towards the intersection of human experience and data science within healthcare. But he also even launched an effort called the Quantified Self, which is a movement aimed to empower citizens to gain self-knowledge through data. So welcome, Anish. So great to have you today. Have you turn on your mic and great, awesome.
Thanks, Jennifer. Wonderful to be here.
Thanks, Anish. And then next we have Dr. Brian Rostein. He's Chief Medical Officer at University Hospitals Ventures. And in this role, he serves as the Chief Clinical Advisor supporting their platform. But he also is the Director of Pediatric Skull Base and Neuro-Oncologic Surgery at Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital. He's also the Director of Neurosurgical Innovation for the Department of Neurosurgery at University Hospitals Cleveland Medical Center. And he is an assistant professor of neurosurgery at Case Western University School of Medicine. So welcome, Brian.
Thanks,
so
Jennifer.
good to have you.
Happy to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
And with that intro, obviously you have a super busy schedule, so we're so appreciative of your time today. And next we have Dr. Lisa Kunz. She's Disease Area Network Lead in Obstetrics and Gynecology at Roche Diagnostics. In this role, she's really working to redefine medical affairs as a strategic partner to the C-suite. Liza is a board-certified OBGYN in maternal and fetal medicine and a maternal and fetal medicine physician. And she's working to bring patient centricity and a clinical mindset to the diagnostics and pharma industry. Welcome, Liza.
Thanks so much for having me, Jen.
All right, great. Good to have you here today. And then finally, we have Monty Kernut. He's Vice President of Corporate Development at Roche Diagnostics. And in this role, he works to drive Roche's entrance into new market segments, both in traditional diagnostic areas and new segments such as digital health. So he works to develop, test, and implement innovative business models to enhance commercial success in Roche's U.S. diagnostic business. Welcome, Monty.
Thank you. Great to be here.
All right. So good to have you guys today. So I'm just going to jump right into it by asking Anish to introduce Babyscripts and give us a little bit of an overview of the technology and the problem that you are aiming to solve with Babyscripts.
Great. Thanks for that question, Jennifer. First of all, if Brittany's still on, you're talking to the newest subscriber of our podcast. Those are some awesome insights. So thanks for your advocacy. That's great. I'm one of the founders of Babyscripts, and we are definitely in the mom baby space. So that was that second, column that was in one of Brittany's charts there. As she alluded to, as a country, as a nation, we do an entirely subpar job of taking care of our moms. And some of the there's statistics all over the place, but the big ones are maternal morbidity and mortality. One of the things we think is kind of a underlying root cause of that is access to care, not having kind of the appropriate access to care teams, providers, and really the infrastructure to get care out to patients when they need it. And that's both in urban settings, but certainly also in rural settings. So really at Babyscripts, the question that we asked is how can smartphones and mobile technologies and smart devices be used to improve that access to care and continue the care continuum, right? We're a technology company, a technology platform that enables care teams and providers to extend their care modalities outside of the four walls of the clinic. Virtual maternity care, as you can see behind me, is kind of what we call it. And some of the things that we focus on is remote patient monitoring, particularly of things like blood pressure. As you can imagine, just generic RPM doesn't work for prenatal and postpartum populations. The patient populations are very different. Even within that, the risk profile is very different. So we have, best in class monitoring when it comes to that. At the highest level, Jennifer, that's what we're all about.
Great. Awesome. So I want to pull in our panelists today that have worked with you in sort of varying ways, but so you're working in pharma, you're working in diagnostics, you're working with providers. First of all, for the startups that are here today, and even maybe for some of the providers, how did you approach, Roche and university hospitals? Was there a difference in your approach? How did you work that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of our beliefs from the very beginning from the genesis of the company was healthcare is complex, messy, and a tech company, by itself it's not going to be able to. Doesn't matter how small, how big you are, as recently has been showcased, right? And so we've always taken a fairly open kind of partnership-oriented mentality to work with within the ecosystem. Obviously, we've always believed the importance of working with clinicians and providers, just because oftentimes I think their perspective and understanding kind of what they're dealing with and their pain points are underappreciated. So that's been there from the get-go. But as we've matured as a company, we've kind of expanded the aperture and started to work with everyone within the industry, right? Including companies like Roche, other parties, so on and so forth, right? But really at the end of the day, I mean, I think one thing we believe very strongly in, if we're not able to partner and work collaboratively in healthcare, more than likely you're going to have an extremely uphill battle, right? And the mantra of "it takes a village" is certainly true, and we're, I think, kind of the living kind of evidence of that.
Yeah, great. And so, Liza, I'd like to start with you, please. So, how did you discover Babyscripts? You have kind of an interesting story. I'd love to hear. And you share.
Yeah, it's actually great to get to partner with Babyscripts now in my role at Roche, because I first learned about Babyscripts before I came to Roche. I was leading a women's health service line for a large multi-specialty physician group in Northern California. And we had two issues that were simultaneously needing a better answer. One was that we didn't have enough time to educate our patients who had lots of questions, who were gathering information from lots of unreliable sources, but didn't necessarily have a vetted place for information for themselves as they wanted to become educated participants in their care. And then physicians who were trying to optimize their schedule and figure out who they really needed to see face-to-face and where they could extend the time between visits. And Babyscripts it became a partnership where we were able to explore and figure out how to solve both of these problems with one solution. So then when I was at Roche and was working on some issues related to maternal health and preeclampsia, I realized there were some common spaces again where we could educate together.
Nice. That's excellent. And then Monty, from a strategy perspective, what were you looking for? Like what got your attention with Babyscripts?
Yeah, as Liza said, we were exploring some diagnostics in the maternal health preeclampsia area and developing diagnostics. And as we were thinking about that, we also saw how, for the whole care pathway throughout the maternity period, there were just gaps that diagnostics weren't going to be able to fill. And we saw the opportunity to fill those with partnering with a digital health company. And so that was really the need we identified. As we really started to explore options in that space, we also came to the conclusion that the challenges weren't going to be solved just with patient education. So apps that were targeting consumers and just getting them to download them and trying to educate them, those are good, but we didn't think they were going to solve the bigger challenges, which really involve around the complexity that Anish just talked about in our healthcare system, and being able to really coordinate what's happening with the health system and the doctor and the patient all together. And so, for us, Babyscripts, we thought had the right approach, which was to really go in and work throughout the whole health system to really get the best outcomes for patients.
That's great. I know we're going to cover that a little bit more later about how there's this need for communication across a much wider sort of range than just like getting to the patient with an app. So Brian, Plug and Play actually introduced University Hospitals Ventures to Babyscripts. Can you talk about how your relationship evolved after that?
Certainly. Yeah, it's, as a partner organization, we get to hear about all of the amazing startups that you guys work with. And we feel very fortunate to have that access, if you will, behind the curtain. And, as the innovation, commercialization, and investment platform for our health system, we're really entrusted with helping our providers find solutions that help fill the gaps that we have. And one of the areas that here in Cleveland that we've always struggled with is maternal morbidity and mortality, as well as infant mortality. And we've had a lot of initiatives that have been put into place by our healthcare system, our OB departments, and our pediatrics department to move the needle a little bit. But our administration recognized that those interventions weren't going to be enough, and that we needed to find other solutions to better communicate, to Liza's point, with our patients and their families. And so we actually were given the task of going out to speak to one of Babyscripts' competitors first. And in our diligence process, in trying to make sure that we looked at all of the opportunities that were out there that filled our needs, Babyscripts bubbled right back up to the top again. It specifically was not only the patient engagement tool and the education piece, but that remote home monitoring piece and that focus on the maternal well-being piece of understanding heart rate variability, blood pressure variability, is really important, because it's not just looking at, do you have hypertension or not? It's, do you have hypertension as a pregnant mom or not? And that piece of it was really compelling to us, as well as the fact that Babyscripts is an early stage company, and they were very interested in working together to help evolve the product to be what it is today.
Awesome. And you guys have a large Medicaid population that you serve as well, right?
We do, very much so. A very urban population, very diverse population with a big Medicare, Medicaid group.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. So glad to hear that Babyscripts won out over the competitor. Anish, so your customers are different players in the industry. We've heard from a couple. How do you deal with each? I want to talk about your approach and sort of touching on your interaction, transparency, communication during the partnership.
Yeah, no, and I'll use both kind of Roche and university hospitals here as examples. I mean, I think, with UH, obviously that was an incredibly unique opportunity for us. I mean, I think, as you can imagine, I think implementing any kind of change within a health organization is a tall order, right? There's all kinds of things to consider. There's workflows, there's different kind of nuances, mechanisms, and going back to my original point, you go at it alone, you have a tough hill climb, right? So what we found with Brian and his team were an internal strong advocate to really sort of help us not just sort of pilot, but then how do you go from the pilot to full scale, right? I mean, I think these days digital health companies can get in and do a pilot, 50 patients, maybe even 100 patients, right? But then a lot of them just go to die at that point. So the challenge these days is how do I go from that initial pilot to a full scale implementation, right? And as much as I hate saying this, as the founder of a tech company, tech is if anything less than half the battle, right? It's everything else that kind of goes along with it, right? So knowing that I can lock arms with Brian and his team to kind of take that on is super important, right? So I just encourage everyone to sort of find those advocates and find those ways to sort of align interests. And obviously with ventures involved, they're also an investor in the company. That also makes things much more aligned, right? And we love that strategic focus. With Roche, we asked the question, hey, how can we start to sort of expand what's possible with Babyscripts? Obviously, we believe in patient advocacy and patient empowerment, and really kind of think through what else can the engagement and the empowerment of the patient here enable us. And with kind of the Roche kind of partnership, we were able to sort of explore that question, right? So each partnership is unique, it's different. Ultimately, it comes down to having strong partners, trust, authenticity, and just being able to kind of work together and being transparent with each other, right? And that's what makes this whole thing kind of work. Sorry, I went on a little bit of
no, that's okay.
But
it's important to hear. We hear that theme over and over: the trust, the relationships. I know it takes time, but that's really key. Brian, can you sort of add on to that from a care delivery perspective? Adopting tech in everyday life and how you guys work with that hurdle.
Certainly, and I appreciate Anish's perspective on it, right? It's not just about finding great technology. It's not just about having great clinicians. It's really about how do you bring those two things together from a patient care perspective and in a wellness perspective. Listen, most people in the world today have one of these, but not everybody does. And finding the population who could benefit from the use of a cell phone to track their blood pressure at home or some sort of app is really important, because we need to make sure that we get the right technology in the hands of the right people. And it starts with clinical champions. It starts with advocates within the healthcare system, the clinicians themselves, talking to their patients about it, finding ways to deliver that information in a meaningful way to get adoption. Because to Anish's point, we could pilot something with 10 patients and those 10 patients loved it. But when we're talking about, 8,000 deliveries a year, there's a much bigger opportunity there. And how do we have to change our care delivery system to make sure that every mom has access to this technology and that we can use it to better the health and well-being of mom and baby is not a small lift. So it comes into play of clinical flow changes, communication changes, how we deal with our call center, all those things. And so finding partners like Anish and Babyscripts that understand the challenges that we have in a very big, complex healthcare environment helps us be more successful when we think about implementation of these technologies.
Yeah, that is a heavy lift. And Brian, just to understand, does UH Ventures help with that transition? Or so are you guys sort of the catalyst to move that along?
We like to think of ourselves as the great convener, right? People come to us with their problems and we try to help find answers to those problems, but we don't just disappear once the pilot happens. We stay there very close in the background, working closely with our clinicians and our partners, the strategic partners like the Babyscripts of the world, to make sure that we have success. Because at the end of the day, for us, success isn't that pilot that fizzled after 10 patients. It's looking at the way that we've been able to impact patient care in our community, number one, and obviously in the Babyscripts perspective, looking at what our investment does in the future. We want Babyscripts, to succeed for two reasons. One, it's better for our patients, and two, it's good for us. So there's a win-win there in the end.
Cool. That's so great. Thanks for those comments. And then Liza and Monty, I want to talk about what it's like for Babyscripts to work in diagnostics. I think it's from what we've talked about before, it's very different, and yet you still have that patient population as well, and having that patient touch and understanding that patient journey is key for you. Can you guys sort of comment on that?
Yeah, I think maybe just a couple points from my perspective. I just go back to, implementing diagnostics is a lot like implementing technology in a health system. It's changing care. It's bigger than just being able to run a test. And so all of the processes that go around, what do you do with that test result? How does it change your next step with the patient and the care process? It's a lot of similar challenges. And so partnering and looking at, how can things like remote patient monitoring help with that overall implementation of a diagnostic is one of the things that we're focused on and trying to learn and do more of. And so that's, where this was such a great partnership fit for us. From what makes it successful, I think I go back to the comments about trust and transparency is just, being really clear and open about what you're trying to accomplish, what the partner startup is trying to accomplish, and being transparent about that and seeing how that can be a win-win, is what we really try to focus on.
And just out of curiosity, Anish, was it just you sort of working the relationships, or is it your whole team? Like, just logistically, I'd love to understand that.
Yeah, we would be in a lot of trouble if it was just me working the relationship, to be clear. So fortunately, I have a great team, particularly kind of the product and engineering side of the house with the partnership with Roche, but then on the customer kind of implementation side, we have a customer success team that works very closely. Really, I'm just here to take the credit, for. Just kidding. No. I mean, yeah, I think certainly these relationships perhaps start through kind of conversations maybe I've had or the other founders had at a conference, but really important to kind of put the team, and it's also true, by the way, on Brian's side and on Monty and Liza's side, right? So it's not just the four of us here. There's a larger operation here. So kudos to everyone if they're listening. They've been doing a great job.
Cool. Hey, Liza, I want to sort of pass it right to you to talk about how you think this working with Babyscripts might change how you deal with preeclampsia and care around that.
Yeah. When Brittany shared those statistics earlier about maternal mortality, that's not a crisis that developed short term. It's something that's evolved and worsened over time. And we haven't gotten the curve back shifted in the right direction. And therefore, it really takes innovative thinking and a different approach to maternity care if we want to change that dynamic. So preeclampsia is a disease state that shows up in lots of different ways for lots of different patients, and it can start to evolve between visits, even at a regular cadence with a provider. So having more data, more opportunities to catch a disease early, and also make sure that patients recognize that their headache, their swelling, their symptoms that may just seem like routine, oh, it's just pregnancy, might be a warning sign, a hallmark of something very, very dangerous, is quite critical. So I think it's, again, the power of more data, more education, and having people start to be able to advocate for themselves throughout their pregnancy journey.
And how do you guys find that the patients are responding? They're the end user, right? And Brian even talked about lots of patients on Medicaid who may not even have access to standard maternal care. How are the patients responding? Liza, maybe you can.
Oh, yeah, sure. I can take it. I wasn't sure if it was me or Brian.
Yeah.
I think patients are very excited about it. They recognize that there are a lot of prenatal visits where it just seems like a quick blood pressure check and a urine dip. And why did I take off of work? Why did I disrupt my schedule and my life to get to clinic? Yet at the same time, do I know that everything is okay between visits? So I really think it gives the power of information to the patient and allows them to have a lot more say in driving their own care.
Yeah, Brian, go ahead and comment on that too.
Yeah, certainly. I would say that, we're still early in our journey with Babyscripts in terms of our implementation. I would say that in terms of our moms downloading, the app and starting to engage with it, I think that the engagement is really good right there. We're really close to rolling out our remote patient monitoring module with Anish and team. They've been working very closely with us to, this is that other great opportunity about having transparency and developing close relationships with our startups. Our clinical team wanted to, evolve the RPM language a little bit, and Anish's team was very open to discussions around that to make sure that it fit our population the way that we felt it needed to. And so, we're in that rollout phase right now. So we're very pleased with it. And I would say, listen, the challenge, I think, is always going to be in a world where there are disparities in health and economics. It's always going to be hard for the adaptation and adoption of digital technologies when not everyone has access to the foundational tool that you need. And so we as an organization are also working with other partners to try to figure out how do we get the tools in patients' hands so that they can then use the applications that we have for them to help make their journey through their wellness better.
That's a great point. And Brittany kind of covered that earlier, talking about, even something as simple as period health or access to period products still is a crisis in the US. And then Anish, sort of along that line, when you set out to do this, you said you were focused on reinventing the standard of prenatal care, but did you have the vision at the time that Babyscripts could have such an impact on population health?
I think, from day one, I think our goals were two-pronged. The first is use tech where applicable, right? And that's important to improve access. And number two, to continuously improve the provider-patient connection, right? And that is kind of the you just put blinders on and just sort of, focus on that. Certainly I think, and this is true both in the venture capital realm, but also just in the overall kind of startup ecosystem. Very glad to see the kind of the hype, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, behind femtech now, right? Back in 2014 when we got going, it was a little lonely, I'm not gonna lie, but at the same time, I'm very, very glad that I think there was about 749 startups, right? I think the number, you know, within the matter of the next 10 months or so will likely double, right? And that's amazing. It's great. And I think the more partnerships, the more sort of like kind of standards we can kind of drive towards, the better off, you know, we all are. But yeah, I mean, we're very kind of thankful and kind of humbled by the traction we've seen. The last point on this is, you know, I can kind of sort of close this up by talking about the impact of COVID, right, on a lot of the work that we're doing. Pregnancy is not an elective procedure. You know, you can't say, hey, you know, let's push that out for 6 weeks or 6 months, right? So March of last year, when, you know, all these stay-at-home orders kind of started to come in nationally, right? Practices across the nation were scrambling to deliver virtual maternity care, and fortunately, you know, we were kind of working on these technologies and these tools for several years before that, right? So we certainly found that as an important opportunity for us to grow and scale.
Awesome. I want to move to asking you guys where you are in the process. Anish, maybe starting with you, where are you in terms of approval or anything else that you may need to really launch?
Yeah, so I mean, I think our work with Roche, you know, we're starting to kind of get to the kind of the final phase here. Some of this does require approval. I'm sure Monty and Lisa can talk about that a little bit more. But you know, as Brian alluded to, you know, the work with university hospitals has been going great initially, right? We've had some pretty strong engagement early on, and as you pointed to, we're now working with the clinical team to sort of refine the RPM protocols and make the necessary changes. Super important that we do. That will kind of really allow us to fully scale and grow within kind of the hospital itself. It's, you know, at the end of the day, the goal is to kind of get to that 8,000 mark, right? I mean, that for us, that's what success is, right? So, and that does require kind of, you know, working kind of hand in hand, understanding where the limitations are, making the modifications if necessary, right? Listening to our customers, listening to partners across the board, and then taking it from there.
Yeah, so Liza, you guys aren't there. You're not quite yet. It hasn't quite launched yet, I should say. But I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about the patient education piece that you deem so important.
Yeah, you know, Roche historically as a company has really focused on educating laboratorians and then educating the people who order the test, educating clinicians. So educating patients is a new adventure for us. And I think it really is reflective of what the company recognizes, is that diagnostics have the opportunity to really shape a patient journey. So it's figuring out how patients perceive the use of lab tests in their journey and making sure that they're not just sticking out their arm for another blood test, but they really understand where it can help clarify questions.
That's great. And Monty, you had talked about patient advocacy and sort of empowerment. Do you think that this partnership with Babyscripts might help the company sort of do more of these, where you're not just educating, you know, people in the lab?
Yeah, I really think so. I think it gives us a good example of how we can, you know, help change care with partnerships. And so thinking about, you know, opening us up to what are other areas of women's health, but also other areas where, you know, we can continue to partner with innovative companies that are changing the way patients interact with their healthcare system and their doctor, and kind of use diagnostics in that process as well to help improve care for those patients. So, you know, I think it's really exciting from that perspective.
Cool. And then Brian, how many OBs or practices is the sort of Babyscripts partnership going to be rolled out with?
So our hope is to get them, to Anish's point, to all of our 8,000 deliveries a year over time. So we've started with our two largest practices. So we have one that's in our Midtown location, which is really serving our urban population in the heart of Cuyahoga County in Cleveland, as well as something on the west side of Cleveland. There are two largest OB practices that we have, and that's where we've started the transformation process. And our hope is that with continued alignment with our patients, and obviously to everyone's point so far, it's really about the patient journey, right? We are there to help guide them on their journey and to do our part to make sure that we have a successful outcome, which is a happy, healthy baby. But in the process of doing that, we really are entrusting our patients to trust us. We go back to that trust theme, to help them find the tools that they need to be as successful as they can be.
So I want to, go ahead, please. Oh, all right, you're good. I want to actually give you guys a chance to focus a little or comment a little on Brittany's talk too. When she presented the graphs and the slides and showing just how there really is a rise in femtech, and it was just sort of, non-existent before. What are your comments on that? Why is there this renewed focus, or I shouldn't even say renewed? Why is there a focus? What do you think is going on? Anish, you want to take that first?
Yeah, I'll go first here, and would love to kind of get others also to chime in on this. I think someone said this on Twitter, and it's finally the recognition that 50% of the population is not niche, right? And I think that's important. I think early on, you start talking to these traditional venture capitalists. Oftentimes there was skepticism, right, around, hey, is there a unicorn here? What's the total TAM? I've gotten that question several times, and I think this is one of the reasons why we do like working and partnering with strategic or femtech focused funds, because they get it, right? So oftentimes if I have to explain sort of the market size, I'm already kind of going down the wrong road, right? So I think that's an important realization that's kicking up. And truth be told, I think for the last maybe 4 or 5 years, there have been a lot of just strong advocates just highlighting kind of the underlying data, right? The fact that, just in the pregnancy space, of course, I always point to maternal morbidity and mortality, right? We just should be doing so much better, right? So both at the policy level, but also at the kind of the startup level, and there's just been a lot of sort of advocacy for it, right? And we're very thankful for those, and want to continue to fashion that. So that's that's I think been a kind of a big reason for the impetus and the focus. And truth be told, I think oftentimes there is the underlying kind of the demographic kind of reality, right? So within Silicon Valley or New York City, most startup founders tend to be, hate to say it, but male engineers, right? So that pregnancy is not the first thing they're going to think about, right, when they think about solving the problems, right? So which is again why it's so important to find these coalitions, support these non-for-profits and other kind of organizations to bring light to the issues, right? And we've certainly made a ton of progress in the last 2 years or so, particularly this year. But there's a ways to go, right? So I do want to say we're still in the early innings here, right? So
yeah. And then Monty, you had maybe wanted to bring up another point that Brittany brought up is, it's not just around, sort of issues around women's periods and stuff, but there's so many other diseases that affect women, and that this rise in femtech needs to address.
Yeah, I think there's so many opportunities. Just to bring up another one that Roche is really focused on is cervical cancer. This is a cancer we should be able to eradicate from our experience if we could get everybody doing the right testing, doing the right follow-up and addressing it. And yet it's still killing many women every year. And so there's so many opportunities to kind of bring innovation and really change the care process in the femtech space, that I think it's a really exciting place to be.
Agreed. Brian, I was really shocked by that clinical trials number, 1993. What's going on sort of to encourage even more study of women?
I think Brittany's presentation was phenomenal. I really think it highlighted the challenges that we have, right? And not only in healthcare, but in this country, equity, diversity, inclusion, right? Those are the big challenges that we have. And in healthcare, I think puts a spotlight on that. There has been inequity in looking at women's health. There has been inequity in looking at the Black and brown populations and social disparities. And so, what are we trying to do about it? We're trying to partner with our clinical champions to identify those issues and bring them to light. Actually, University Hospitals Ventures is putting on a Women's Health and Femtech Innovation Day early next year. Again, just trying to bring as many ideas into the fold so that we can figure out where there's opportunity for us to achieve better outcomes, right? Not only in the maternal morbidity and mortality space, but everywhere else. You know, we as an organization are very committed to equity across the healthcare playing field. And, you know, as ventures, we actually are also invested in another femtech company, a pelvic floor rehab company that we're really excited about. And, you know, I think that to Brittany's point and Anish's point, there's just so much excitement around the creating a level playing field for women's health right now, that it's just a great space to be in.
And Liza, you've been in this space for a long, long time. What's your view of it right now?
You know, unfortunately, when we don't head on address the needs of Black and brown patients, of women, of pregnant patients, we're only going to see the gaps in care and outcomes grow instead of shrink. I think we've seen it really, unfortunately, in full focus these last month to 2 months with COVID, where pregnant patients weren't included in clinical trials in the get-go, and then there's hesitancy to vaccinate, and we see pregnant patients dying from a disease we can prevent. That's no different than cervical cancer, where it's a disease we can prevent. And when we don't focus on the right patient, we miss the opportunity. So I'm happy to see that there's an interest in menstruation and pregnancy care. And that top column in Brittany's slide, I think we have to think about every single disease that can affect a woman and think about what their experience is that's different from a man who has the disease, and how can we target that to make sure the gaps don't grow.
Great, thank you so much. We're also going to have a little bit of Q&A, so if you have a question, please put it in the chat for our panelists. I would love to entertain some questions, but I do want to give the panelists a chance to maybe give some advice, you know, to startups or healthcare organizations that are looking to partner, maybe in a sentence or two. Anish, what's your advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd say two things, right? And one we already touched on. You know, one of the things that is extremely kind of clear with our relationship with Roche and UH is the fact that, you know, the trust is super important. It all starts with trust, you know, and being authentic. Not everything is perfect. You know, I'm the first one to say it. So let's just address that and then take it from there, right? And that's kind of that important recognition, right? So that's one. And then also for, you know, really for other founders that are kind of starting out, right? It is important to be persistent. You know, I've had partnerships that have been incredibly successful, like the ones on this panel, but also ones that have, you know, for lack of a better term, crash and burn. And that's you know, if not a possibility, perhaps even likely, right? So don't be dissuaded by that. You know, oftentimes it comes down to finding the right person that is, you know, I always say it's like you and your champion on the other side should be in on the same secret of sorts, right? And should be advocating for that together, right? That's when you know you've had it, and that's just certainly true with an investor that I'm looking for, an early customer that I'm looking for, right? So on and so forth. So I think persistence and trust are two really important things when it comes to just the building partnerships and your overall network the right way. You know?
Great, cool. And then Brian, what would you say? What's your advice?
I think my advice to startups is very similar to Anish's perspective, is that number one, it's really important to find that clinical champion. We're talking specifically about working in the clinical space, finding that person who's going to be your advocate within the healthcare system, because listen, healthcare is really messy. We are highly matrix, very complex organizations, and nothing moves at the speed that we want it to. Innovation outside of healthcare moves very rapidly, and it's amazing. Inside of healthcare, rightfully so, as a clinician, I'll say we're a little slow to adopt sometimes. And also because of the way that our organizations are structured, given the payer situation, given the challenges of the delivery of care, given the disparities that we've talked about, it can be hard and it can take time. So that concept on persistence pays off. Absolutely. Don't get discouraged because it's not moving as fast as you want it to move. Find that clinical champion, be dedicated, and have trust in the system, because when you have the right solution, people are going to want it.
Thank you, Brian. That's great advice. And Liza, I know that you had kind of advice around sort of clinical participants as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as I learn more and more about the femtech space, I see a lot of startups that are very enthusiastic and going straight to patients, but not including a clinician in their design process, in their thinking. And don't short circuit the clinicians who have dedicated their careers to understanding the disease processes and understanding the patient journey. We want to be your partners in the journey. We don't want to be sort of left on the sideline. I think the best solutions will actually happen when we bring the tech, the patient, and the clinician all to the same table.
Got it. Great. And then Monty, I wanted you to reiterate that thing about apps.
Yeah, and I think it goes to Liza's point she just made, which is, especially in the health area where delivering better care is complicated, and it requires a lot of people to be on the same page. I just encourage not to focus on patient downloads and showing I got a million patients to download my app, but how are you actually changing care with the healthcare system, and being able to show that your app's contributing to the better outcome. I think it's so important in the health space, given the dynamics of our healthcare system. So just really be thinking about that as you're thinking about your strategy.
Right. It's not just the consumer that you have to consider. It's also the clinician. It has to work with so many different angles. Anish, one question that did come in was your business model. How does it actually work? Sort of the digital app part. How does Babyscripts sort of make their model work?
Yeah, I mean, we pursue two forms of business models. One is a provider-focused model, and really the value prop there is all about optimizing the overall routine of prenatal care, creating enhanced engagement and education with patients, but also creating operational efficiencies. So that's kind of one piece of it. The other piece is, of course, working with payers, right? Because ultimately, I think we believe that these type of toolings and working with providers can clearly identify risk quicker, and then allow opportunities for providers to intervene quicker, which of course we also believe that will eventually kind of lower complications and ultimately lower the cost of care. So that's the ROI when it comes to payers, right? So we started off with kind of a provider-focused business model. Over the last year or so, we've shifted more into the payer and plan world. So,
got it. Great. Well, I think that's all the time we have today. And thanks so much for your participation, your incredible insights and willingness to share sort of the pain and the success that you go through when you work on these. I know that having worked with you all for a while, it's a labor of love. So, congrats to all the progress you've made. And again, thanks so much for being on our panel today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Jen.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Guys. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Our pleasure. Okay, so now I'm going to pass it over to Ava Asghari. She is our Senior Program Manager at Plug and Play, and we're going to get into the startup presentations.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. And hello, everyone, and welcome. So a big thank you again to Brittany and our fantastic panelists that we just heard from. What a great panel. And we really got some fascinating stuff out of it. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ava Asghari, and I'm the Senior Program Manager for Health here at Plug and Play. I run the two healthcare accelerator programs that we put on twice a year with our corporate partners here across the US. I'm really excited to be emceeing the startup portion of this event with you all today. So we're going to be featuring 3 amazing women's health startups for you all. We're going to be touching on sexual wellness, postpartum and maternal care, and early diagnosis with the 3 companies, Coral, the Snapback, and Gabby. So each startup will have a 4-minute pitch. Then we'll invite the speakers to join us live for a Q&A from our audience. So do make sure to fire up those questions, whether it be in the comments or in the Q&A box for us. And if you watch the pitch and you're interested in learning more or connecting with the startup, we'll launch a poll after each company pitches where you can mark yes to meeting with them, and we'll help make those introductions after the event. So with that, let's get started. So first up, we have one of our portfolio companies, Coral, which is a consumer app that promotes sexual wellness.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ishana Walsh. I'm the founder and CEO of Coral, your trusted guide to create your happiest and healthiest intimate life. So why did we build Coral? Sex and intimacy are fundamental to our health and happiness as humans. The research here is unequivocal. Much like these other pillars of health and wellness, our sexual satisfaction impacts the way we feel on a daily basis and has big implications for our relationship satisfaction. But unfortunately, most of us are set up to fail. So if you think about your earliest sexual education, it was probably something like mine, completely fear-based. So avoid STIs, don't get pregnant or get someone pregnant. And then we go on and expect our sex lives to just work, even though we're given completely unrealistic expectations because of media and porn. And then on top of that, we really struggle to talk about it and get access to like real, actual materials because there's so much stigma and taboo surrounding the subject matter. Which means, unfortunately, that most people are sexually dissatisfied. The data here is crazy. So I'll just outline this first one. Over 50% of women and over 40% of men say that they've experienced difficulties in their sex life. So this is things like sexual boredom, issues with desire, feeling low desire, maybe high desire, struggles with erections, orgasms, lasting for 3 or more months within the last 12 months. Isn't that crazy? This is the biggest unaddressed problem in health and wellness today. So we built something to help. Coral is a combination of content, so guided audio exercises, written content. We've partnered with internationally recognized experts to create content that helps people meet goals like feeling more connected, heating things up, getting out of their head. We then combine that with community. So we have a very open and vulnerable community that share what's going on for them. And our experts respond and the other coralers weigh in. This is really normalizing and validating. It's also a little voyeuristic. And then we also have a guided chat feature where you connect your account to a partner and we facilitate conversation designed to prompt you to feel closer, more connected, prioritize intimacy in your relationship. Our product actually works. We're so proud of this. 68% of users say Coral has given them a better sex life within 2 weeks. And these are really deep issues. So we're very proud of this. Obviously, we want to continue to improve it, but we get feedback every day, like this app saved our relationship. It helped me unpack religious shame, helped me process sexual trauma. It's brought fun back into sex. Our plan moving forward is to move from our $60 annual subscription business into coaching support and longer term commerce. We will own the sexual wellness vertical. We've built a very broadly resonant brand. Our user groups, our biggest is in California and our second biggest is in Texas. We see population across the US engaging with the product. We have over 400,000 downloads, over 16,000 subscribers. We're very excited to own this vertical. Consumers have changed their approach to health and wellness, and the time for Coral is now. Let me know if you've got any questions.
Wonderful. We have Asharna on the line. Welcome.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
So for anyone interested in meeting with Coral, we just launched a poll. So feel free to mark yes or no if you'd like to be introduced to them or learn a little bit more about them. In the meantime, is there anybody in the audience that has any questions for Coral? Feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A.
I'm not sure of the audience here today. I know it's like a mix of investors and corporate partners, but I'd be curious to connect with any corporate partners who'd be open to having this conversation with their teams. Divorce, relationship stress are a huge productivity sink. So if you're forward thinking and open-minded, this could be a really interesting partnership.
Yes, definitely. We do have a question here.
Yeah.
It says, will Coral be growing their team anytime soon? Which roles or teams do you see growing first?
Yes, we are currently growing our team. So we have open roles in engineering, one. We've just hired 2 engineers, and then we're looking for a strong product lead and a growth lead. So if you've got any connection to anyone who might be interested with that, I would love to speak with them.
And we have a question here. What is your revenue and how do you monetize?
So revenue is through content subscription. So we have a $60 annual subscription. We've stayed on that model because we've got a really great CAC and we get over 100% payback in that first transaction historically. So we've just stayed with a $60 annual subscription. Moving forward, we'd like to increase LTV through initially coaching. And I think longer term, there's a really interesting commerce opportunity.
Wonderful. And last question, how will you work with providers given that none really focus on sexual health?
Yeah, so this is why it's a direct-to-consumer product. We do partner with therapists. So therapists recommend Coral to their clients, and it's not a formal arrangement. The client pays for Coral, so it's not subsidized by their insurance. I mean, long-term, I'd be curious to see if there is an opening as we demonstrate efficacy to partner with providers, but that's not our model. We're going straight to the consumer currently.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Ashana, for joining us. I know there's a few questions in the chat box if you wanted to stay for a second and address those, but we do have to go to the next startup. But thank you so much again.
Of course, such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. Wonderful. And up next, we have one of our fall 2021 batch companies, the Snapback. They're an all-in-one evidence-based postpartum community that mothers need. So please welcome the Snapback.
Hi, I'm Dr. Preeti Patel, CEO and founder of the Snapback. We've built the only all-in-one evidence-based postpartum app and community moms need. In pregnancy, there are ample resources, apps, and access to healthcare professionals. Someone is holding your hand daily until delivery. Imagine jumping off a cliff while someone holds your hand and then they let go halfway, but you end up at the bottom alone with a baby. That's postpartum. The average time between delivery and the postpartum visit is 6 weeks, which is actually a long time if you've had daily support. 40% of women don't even make it to this appointment. After 6 weeks of sedentary living and navigating one of the most profound physical and psychological shifts a woman can experience, we're cleared to resume activity. 9 months of creating life, readjusting organs, can't be solved in one 15-minute appointment. Postpartum is one of the most overwhelming period in a mother's journey. In fact, 52% of maternal deaths happen in postpartum. This quick and vague clearance leads to long-term issues like incontinence, pain with intercourse, back pain, and abdominal separation. 95% of women experience some type of physiological issue that impedes their quality of life. The Snapback app is an evidence-based tool that has been reviewed by gynecologists and physical therapists. The rehab techniques are specific to each mother's type of delivery. The app features articles that are time-released and weekly insights for both mom and baby. The tracking features on the app allow parents and caretakers to track bowels, feedings, journal. One of our most unique features is our anonymous form that allows mothers to connect without judgment. I hold a doctorate in pharmacy, and I'm a certified pre- and postnatal fitness trainer. I had such a challenging postpartum experience that I was compelled to create a solution that would support every mother after me. This is what the beta app looks like on the iOS and Google Play Store in 166 countries. Here's a glimpse. Currently, the app has content for 3 months. We offer the app on a subscription basis on 3 tiers, 1 month for $30, 3 months for $75, and 12 months for $240. Based on the feedback of our community, there is great interest in an effective stretch mark cream and postnatal vitamin. The cream has been sourced and is ready to manufacture. These are markets that we are eager to grow into. 3.8 million babies were born in the US alone last year. This is going to rise this year. Based on a recent study, birthing moms spend an average of $3,100 on themselves in the first year. Our total addressable market includes postpartum moms with an average income of $40,000 or above, with a size of 3.8 million as of 2020. In 18 months of an entirely organic outreach, we generated $60K in revenue. Our conversion rate averages from 15% from free to paid. We performed a 4-week ad campaign to test capital efficiency with our current product. With $3,000 in marketing spend, we decreased our CPI from $6.65 to $1.61. Utilizing our most popular plan of $75 and being conservative with our gross profit, we calculated an LTV to CAC ratio of 5.5 times. Users spend an average of 15 minutes in the app daily, and they're extremely engaged in our social media communities. Here's the competitor landscape that consists of apps that offer individual features, but none that are all inclusive. With additional funding, we can increase the content in the app to extend our user retention from 3 months to 12, among the others that are listed here. We would also integrate our first product to add to the subscription model. Our growth is reflected in the 372% year-over-year increase from 2019 to 2020. We are not only capital efficient, but we are recommended and have repeat mothers. The world creates tech for the future. It's time we create tech for moms who birth the future. Thank you.
Wonderful. So if anyone has any questions or would like to connect with Dr. Patel and learn more about the Snapback, feel free to fill out the poll and we'll help make that intro for you. So while you fill out the poll, I'm going to welcome Dr. Pinky Patel for a few Q&A questions.
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, I see one. Someone asked, Snapback, can your app help providers focus on postpartum discharge? Currently, most surgeries or procedures check on patients afterward, but that does not exist in delivery. The system needs to be changed.
Yes, absolutely. So that's one of the reasons why I created it. I feel like whenever they go to see the provider at 6 weeks postpartum, it's a quick and vague appointment, right? And so in long term, they end up with pelvic floor abnormalities and diastasis recti and things that really affect their quality of life. So I feel like getting this in the hands of possibly maternity units, hospitals, providers, right whenever they have the baby, so that they're not, so lost in that first 6 week period is critical. So that's why we're trying to work with corporate partners to see if we can change this. Because currently we're D2C, but we're establishing those partnerships right now.
Wonderful. And I do see another question. Is there a product line in mind to help mothers after postpartum?
Yes, absolutely. So that's the whole stretch mark recovery cream that I've created, the pharmacist in me, and then also the postnatal vitamin, because many women, almost 85% of women are taking a prenatal postpartum, and they should be actually taking a postnatal vitamin.
Wonderful. And I do see one last question. Gati said, great point, Jennifer. Didn't think of this discharge planning entry point. My question is around long-term effects of pelvic health, adhesions, etc.
Yes, so that in the app, it was very meticulous in terms of the algorithms that we've created. So there's algorithms that are in the back end. So if you had a first, second, third degree tear, or if you had a C-section, every experience is different. And then we collect data points from mothers to see how they're progressing from pelvic health to their core.
Wonderful. Someone said they'd be interested in your current funding round. So I'll let you take that one. Thank you so much again, Dr. Patel. We will help connect you to all of the folks that were interested. Thank you so much again for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And last but not least, we have another portfolio company, Gabby. So Gabby reduces the rate of delayed diagnosis for women, primarily in breast cancer, by empowering them to proactively seek the care that they need. So let's welcome Gabby.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Christine, and I'm the CEO and founder at Gabby. I lost my mom to a delay in diagnosis of breast cancer in 2013. Shortly after, I exhibited similar symptoms and had to fight to get my own diagnosis over a year and a half later, where I was diagnosed with breast cancer at age 24. At Gabby, we're on a mission to save women's lives by increasing early detection. We believe that when every woman knows her risks and her options, she can live a healthier, longer life. The problem I identified after my personal experiences with breast cancer was that my mom and I are not unique. Tons of women around the world are being diagnosed with breast cancer late, especially younger women and women of color. In fact, 85% of women under 50 are diagnosed at late stages when the disease is more life-threatening and more costly. This occurs for a myriad of reasons, but first and foremost, because there are no effective breast cancer screening tools for these populations. Gabby solves these problems with a two-part solution. First, our AI model identifies the women who are most at risk by incorporating claims data, EHR, and patient-reported data. And second, the Gabby app compels women to take action through personalized action plans, community support, and accountability with a human-centered design approach. How do we do this, and why are we better? Well, the existing methods for breast cancer early detection have three major holes. First, inclusivity. They're only appropriate for white women over 35. Two, their accuracy. At best, existing risk models have a 63% accuracy. And third, they're only used in clinical settings where only 5% of clinicians run their female patients through these risk models. These three pillars ultimately allow us to identify women earlier, decreasing the time to a diagnosis, improving health outcomes, and decreasing the overall cost of care. We proved this in a pilot with a national payer. This payer had 16,000 women diagnosed with breast cancer in 1 year, with almost 13,000 being diagnosed at late stages. Had they been using Gabby, more than 75% would have been diagnosed at earlier stages, when the disease is most treatable and less costly, saving over 5,000 lives. For example, we would have found Mira. Mira is a 35-year-old woman of color who's a working mom of 2 boys. She's healthy, active. Her paternal uncle had prostate cancer, and both of her pregnancies had some complications. Unfortunately, Mira was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer in 2018. But had she been using Gabby, she would have been detected 2 years earlier at stage 1. We are looking for self-funded employers who want to bring Gabby to their employees. And the first step for us is to perform an opportunity assessment on your employee population. With access to your claims data, we can provide exact numbers on this quantitative opportunity. For example, for a 50,000 employee population, the projected annual cost savings is almost $4 million. And this doesn't even include productivity savings, employee retention savings. If women's health, gender, and racial equity and your employees are a priority for you, please reach out for a product demo. Thank you.
Wonderful. And do we have Caitlin on the line?
Yes, I am here.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, how are you?
Good, good. So again, to anyone in the audience, if you'd like to meet with Gabby or connect with them and learn a little bit more about what they do, feel free to fill out the poll that has popped up on your screen. Are there any questions for Gabby? Someone asked Gabby, what's the business model?
Sure. Thanks for that question, Jennifer. We are B2B2C, so we sell to self-funded employers who provide our app and product to their female employees.
Wonderful. And then as a follow-on, have you started that conversation with employers, or is there any traction?
Yes, we did a pilot earlier this year, validating our risk model. And then we are kicking off a phase 1 of a 3-step phase enterprise rollout with our first self-funded employer.
Wonderful. We got another question. Have you talked to women's pharma companies?
I'd love to know more specifically what pharma companies you're thinking of. We have spoken to a couple pharma companies, but the conclusion was that breast cancer and how we could work together right now was not a priority for them. So if you have any other recommendations on specific pharma companies, totally open.
Wonderful. And we have another question. Gabby, what input parameters were used for risk calculation?
So there's a variety of factors. The standard of care risk models take into account, most of them generally take into account family history, age, height, weight, and then some of them have additional details, but only a couple other points of reference. So we're taking into almost 22 other specific points.
Wonderful. And last question, there's such a push towards detecting breast cancer. What's the biggest hurdle you found in getting the app out there?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I think I think that's a two-part question, and I'll answer the first part of it. The biggest hurdle to really just detecting breast cancer and getting that accomplished is adoption from all sides, payer, employer, and the consumer, as well as providers. We're challenging the way detection is currently done today. So of course that can be an uphill battle.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, that's all the time we have for questions. So Caitlin, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. Happy to make introductions afterwards from our poll. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much again. A big, big thank you to our speakers and to the startups that joined us today, and for our audience that tuned in, of course. We have recorded this session and we'll be sharing it via our social media channels in about the next week or so. So be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. We just posted the links to both of those below. So we'll share the recording with you all that way. You will see another poll pop up. So let us know how we did. How you like this session. We hope to share, more webinars like this, have more industry experts and subject matter experts for other topics in healthcare as well. So give us our feedback and tell us how we did and if you want to see more of this. So thank you again to everyone that tuned in. We will see you all very soon. Take care.